Hey, welcome to the 170th episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing.
This episode was brought to you by patron Alex Schwartz. I'm Oren Kaplan.
And I'm Matt Enlow. Today we've got Drea Clark on. She's a festival programmer, a producer, a podcaster, jack of all trades.
She even taught at USC Film School for a while.
Yeah, for like 13 years. So she is a wealth of knowledge. We could have talked to her for another 15 hours, but we dive in a ton on the insight that she has garnered from being in the festival game for so long and how she applies that to her producing career. How she picks projects, the ways in which she makes them stand out amongst the crowd, and how she applies her wealth of filmic knowledge to producing in general.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that she works at Sundance now and ran Slamdance, so not the tiniest festivals you've never heard of.
Yeah, she's a wealth of knowledge and a real hoot. Also on the show, we're bringing back this segment, Callsheet.
I wonder if any of our listeners actually remember that we did this segment before.
I would say 10.
Yeah,
10
I think
do.
that's 10 is the episode that we last did it in.
It's been a while, but we're bringing it back, and I think that it's kind of retooled. Before we were just trying to talk to as many different crew members as we could, and that's pretty overwhelming, and you end up wanting to talk to everybody for a super long amount of time. So we've retooled it, and we are looking at the hidden jobs of the filmmaking industry. People who you've heard of their job, but you don't really have a great understanding of what they do. So we're talking to my old friend Elena White, who writes commercial treatments. So we'll talk about what she likes about treatments, what she doesn't, the things that she does to punch things up and make them even better to get huge directors even bigger and better jobs. But before we do that, we have one important pressing matter, and that is our Patreon page.
Yeah, we have a Patreon page, patreon.com/justshootitpod. It's a place for you to support the podcast. If you like what you're hearing, if you tune in every week and you feel like you get some value out of this, then check out our Patreon page and give us $1 a month.
Throw us $1 or $2.
We appreciate it. And if you don't, we still appreciate you. Thanks for listening. But really, folks, if you don't give us money, then just tell other people about the podcast.
Yeah, that's almost as good. Maybe
that's the
even
trade.
just as good.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for listening, and on with the show.
Elena, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us what you do exactly.
I am a commercial treatment writer, which is a ghost writer for commercial directors, which basically means that I do technical and creative writing on behalf of the directors when they're bidding on commercial jobs, and that gets submitted to the ad agency along with a numerical bid that comes from the production company.
So we talk a lot about treatments on the show, and you were basically like the secret weapon of a director who's maybe too busy to really kind of dial in exactly what they want to say on a treatment, or maybe they're not like as strong a writer as you are. You're kind of, you're lending your expertise on writing treatments to directors who want a little bit of extra help.
Yes.
How does a director find you? How do you get employed by these people?
So most of the companies that I work with are larger production companies, and they have anywhere from like 5 to 25 directors on their roster. So originally when I first started, I was working for a pretty big commercial production company, and I was a coordinator there. And my executive producer had quite a few directors on the roster who were French. English was not their first language, and although their speaking skills were great,
that's good.
Writing is difficult no matter what, so it's even more difficult when you're writing in a language that is not your first language. So I started rewriting treatments for some of the directors on our roster. And so that's how I got into it. And then from there, when I decided that I wanted to go freelance, there was executives and other coordinators at the company who were really helpful in getting my name out to other directors that they worked with, friends that they had at other production companies, the freelancers who come in and work on commercial jobs. They might be there for a couple of weeks and then they are off to the next company, so they take your name out with them. Mm-hmm. So it was really more word of mouth and connection.
Word gets out.
Yeah, that's how I did it. Now, I do know other people who, basically cold called production companies and emailed samples and, made connections that way. But for me, it was more word of mouth and people who, having met all these people at the first production company that I worked at.
now that you've kind of moved into doing this full-time professionally, it's not just people where English is a second language for them. It's kind of just anybody who needs help.
Yeah,
Would you say that's
exactly. And even before I left that production company, other directors who were under other EPs at the company had started using me. And it really just comes down to the deadlines are so quick. And you have your phone call with the agency, and then they're like, okay, maybe can we get a treatment in like 2 or 3 days? And for instance, that director, if they're on another job, if they're, in Budapest directing 3 days, 3-day shoot, they're really not going to have time to sit down and write a treatment and make it sound good. So they hire someone like me who can help them out. Or, again, if they're not the greatest writer in the world. And honestly, sometimes you just get directors who are a little burnt out because they've been directing commercials forever and they've written thousands of treatments and they just don't feel like they have a whole lot left to say in terms of writing treatments. So they'll hire someone like me for those reasons as well.
Do you have any moves you like to do? Or do you have any, what's your secret weapon? Well, what are you adding? What do you like to add the best, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think the first thing is you always want to really make it feel as though the director wrote it themselves. You don't want to go so far afield into your own style that the agency reads it or the client, at the end of the day reads it, and they know that there is no way the director wrote it. So for me, it's really paying attention to how the director speaks on the conference call, the kinds of jokes that they make. Do they like to use multi-syllabic words, or do they really stick to short words and succinct sentences? You just want to make sure that that comes across in the treatment so that they feel like it's an extension of the person that they spoke to on the phone when they did their conference call.
Can I ask you a specific question about that?
Sure.
If they swear a lot on the call, do you try to put that into the treatment?
So, no, we usually don't put curse words into the treatment. I myself, as Matt can tell you, I have terrible potty mouth. So there will be times when I will try and work in a swear word or two into the
fucking
treatment.
Awesome.
Yeah, fucking awesome, I feel like, is the one. If you're doing like a beer commercial or like a sports spot, you could say fucking awesome. Tongue in cheek, right?
I've been trying to pretend I'm young, and I'll put an AF. This will be cool AF. This will make your socks.
Boy, Oren loves the fire emoji an awful lot in his treatments.
I think for me, where I tend to use it the most is actually when I'm writing out the story itself. So, for instance, if you have a character who you want to convey that they have a certain expression on their face, like a what the fuck expression, right? And I might write something in italics that says, what the fuck just happened?
Right.
And sometimes I'll try and soften it by putting an asterisk in for the you. And it just depends on who the agency is and who the client is. Sometimes I get away with it.
Butthole.
Yeah, sometimes they let it slide, but most of the time they're like, yeah, let's take out the cuss words.
And are you collaborating with a layout artist as well? Are they helping with pulling? Because that's the other half of the treatment, right? Of course, it's there's so many visual elements that are involved in that. How do you collaborate with those people?
So if I even know who the visuals person is on the job, my specific collaboration with them is more about, hey, when do you need to have the written words from me by in order to get your part of the job done in enough time?
Right.
And I tend to add a lot of my own ideas into the treatment. So these poor visuals people will get the treatment and they'll read some weird stuff that I put in there, and then they're like, oh God, I gotta do a quick pull on these ideas that she added. So excuse my French, but it's shit kind of rolls downhill.
Sure.
So I don't really interact with them too much beyond just coordinating deadlines.
Rolling your shit down the hill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, here's the treatment. Hope you like all the extra stuff I added.
Yeah. Well, but that's so interesting, though, because I think that's probably, that's part of what they're paying you for, too. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not just articulate what the director said on the call in a more cogent way, it's like you still have to plus it, right?
100%. Yes, absolutely. Even when the director is on the call with the agency and maybe they're spitballing ideas back and forth, and they'll throw out stuff that seems really great in the moment, but then when you're working on the treatment, it doesn't make sense in the story somehow. So part of the treatment writer's jobs, or at least I consider it treatment writer's job, you help make the story make sense. And there's some directors that I never speak to. I just listen to the call and I write the treatment off of that. There's others that I work with who I might, talk to them for about an hour before I start writing, and just so that I can be a sounding board that he or she can bounce ideas off of. So for me, that's what makes the job interesting, is that, you're not just some transcriptionist and you're not just, putting sentences together. You're adding in, you're plussing their creative vision with your own creative vision.
You're the secret weapon.
I try to be.
I really would love to know, kind of what the biggest mistakes you've seen in treatments, what makes horrible treatments.
Let's see.
Well,
she's never submitted one, so.
But I definitely have looked at a lot
I'm sure
of.
she's fixed many.
Yeah, that's true.
I have fixed treatments, and I always ask for samples when I'm working with someone new, just so I can see what their writing style is like. I think when you read treatments where they're trying too hard to be clever, I think where you read treatments that, all of us, mistakes are going to get by, typos are going to get by. I'm terrible at spotting my own typos. Like at this point, I don't even typo check the first draft. I come back and check it later because I'm not going to see those typos. But I will see treatments that have been sent out that are just riddled with mistakes. And,
Wow. Well, it sounds like that's something that's just nice and straightforward, at least. Just,
Yeah. It's really just, just making sure your work is meticulous, and then also just not trying to be overly clever where it feels like you're being phony.
Right.
Just show genuine enthusiasm about the project. Don't be phony with it.
Ah, well, that's so wonderful. What straightforward advice. Just kind of dot your I's and cross your T's, and also be genuine. That's exactly what you want to hear. Do you know what I mean? There's no booby trap to that. It's
Absolutely.
Just be a good student. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Elena. It's so great to get to have you on the show and to shed a little bit of light on this kind of secret sort of part of the industry. It's so interesting to me. We haven't done a call sheet in a long time, and it was because I was like, oh, this is the perfect thing. Everybody knows what a DP does. Who cares about that? I want to talk to people where it's I am maybe a little foggy on what the job is. That's my favorite. So yes. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Elena.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break because we have Seth Worley, one of the co-founders of Plot Devices, with us here in the studio. His company makes products that help filmmakers figure out their stories and storyboards and all sorts of cool things. Seth, can you tell us a little bit about your process of how you write a feature script and why the story clock is helpful for that?
Yeah, so I realized a while back that when I get a story idea, I don't just get one idea. I don't get a log line just broadcast to me. I get a big pile of ideas. Some of them are really well formed, like scenes, sequences, characters, themes. Some of them are weird, random, unformed ideas that need to be grown a little more. And because I have a loose sense of traditional Joseph Campbell story structure, I know where most of these ideas are probably going to fall in the story. So when I drop them in, inevitably there are big gaps that need to be filled to get me from point A to C. This is normally where I break down crying and give up and stop. Until I figured out this process, which made it a lot easier for me, by visualizing the story like a clock. If it's a 2-hour movie, the 30-minute point is at the 3 o'clock mark, the hour point is at the 6 o'clock mark, and so on. You'll find that, act breaks are normally right above 3 o'clock and right above 9 o'clock. And you take the ideas, your pile of ideas that you got, you drop them generally where they're probably going to fall in the story, and you pinpoint the gaps. And then by using symmetry, you can fill these gaps organically. Rather than injecting random weird ideas from the outside, you can extract ideas from what you already have. So if I see I have a gap at one point in the story, I can look at the opposite side of the clock to see where there are things that I could build on or pay off. It's a simple but effective way to be able to fill out the story and to get to an outline quicker and start writing. Whether you end up following that outline or not, it gives you at the very least peace of mind and confidence to keep going into the weeds.
Cool. Well, if you want to find out more about the Story Clock and the various products that Plot Devices makes to help you figure out your movie, check out plotdevices.co.
This week, this is the big one. We're giving away everything. That's right. We're talking storyboard notebook. We're talking Story Clock notebook. We're talking Story Clock workbook and your choice of a pin.
To win it all, go to Instagram or Twitter right now, tag @PlotDevicesCO, and let us know what movie or show had a plot twist that just blew your mind. And let's disqualify Sixth Sense from the get-go. For me, a movie with a twist that really inspired me was Memento. Totally changed what the entire movie was about. And then more recently, I really loved what happened at the end of the third episode of Russian Doll. Made that show so much more unique than I thought it was going to be. I really loved it. So let us know what movie or show had a plot twist that blew your mind, and you might just win it all. Hey, we are here with Drea. Thank you for coming.
Drea Clark, hello, welcome.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Your resume is super long and super complex, right? You've got a lot of different stuff going on.
Drea, you're so old and unfocused. It's a delight to have you.
Well, it was aiming for a compliment. So
You're a master of all trades.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Film critic, programmer, podcaster, producer.
Festival programmer. Yes,
Festival
yes,
programmer, pardon me. Yeah.
I don't want people giving me
this is a
the
C++
computer.
JavaScript.
Exactly.
Sorry, Oren's disappointed, but I'm extra
Yeah, that's
excited.
why we're looking for engineer/filmmakers.
Ignore his LinkedIn request then.
Yes, my GitHub. Do you know that website?
Oh, I'm so glad I
GitHub
don't.
page?
No.
Drea. Let's start with festival programming. What festivals do you program for currently, and which ones have you programmed for in the past?
I feel chronologically is the best way to explain
perfect.
my festivals because there's been overlap. I started in festivals when I moved out to LA many moons ago. I graduated from the University of Wisconsin.
Oh, cool. Cheesehead?
Obviously, yes. Go Badgers. As I'm sure you know, like, obviously you think film schools.
Of course,
and you think
yeah.
Madison, Wisconsin.
I do want to say that it's great for listeners to hear because I think we get people writing in all the time that are like, should I go to film school? Or like,
I have answers
I
for
went
that.
to a crappy film school and I feel bad about it. It's not a big deal.
No. I taught at USC School of Cinema for 13 years, and I don't think you should necessarily go to a film school.
Really?
But I went to USC Forward, not 13, but
12 years.
thank God. What did you teach?
I taught music video production.
Oh, dang.
What? That's a class?
I wanted to take that class so bad.
It was great.
That is a great class.
Yeah, it was great.
A lot of good videos come out of that class, too.
I thought so. And it was wonderful because I was able to bring in, this is going to be a very meandering thing because my career, as you mentioned, has been very meandering.
I'm going to get you back onto film festivals.
No, it's okay because it does all tie in. I started in production working in music video. And so that was my background of learning the ropes, really. And it was great in terms of just hands-on experience because the turnover time is so quickly. Normally, a TV show, if you're lucky enough to get crewed on that, you're locked in for a long time. Indie films, even a short one is still like 3 or 4 weeks, whereas a music video, if you're on, you can kind of prove yourself as worthy and kind of make yourself, because once people have a crew and a team they like, those are the people you call first every time. So once you prove that you're not a dum-dum and relatively competent and easy to be around for very long shoot days, then
you're good to go.
You're hopefully pretty good to go. So
if you can prove that without spending $45,000 a year,
even better. But the festival thing, so I moved out here with no plan from Wisconsin. I just knew I was going to move to LA or New York, and I'm from the Midwest, so I was done with snow. It's like LA it is.
Yeah.
I didn't really have any contacts or a good solid plan, but you guys had a dream in my heart and that Midwestern work ethic, and
we all moved here, right?
Yeah.
I get you.
I mean, step one is move here. Step
Right.
2 is figure out why you moved here.
yeah, no, it's very real. I think the figuring out why is a huge part. And when I studied, I studied communication arts, which was TV, film, and then English, and so we did more. There were some production classes, but it was more film theory and film criticism and developing an eye. And I think that's definitely helped my career as a programmer in looking at things historically, having context, like that helps when you're comparing films like against other films. But when I moved out here, I wasn't totally sure what I was going to do. I ended up making friends with some people who went to SC randomly. And one of them was interning. I didn't even know what interning was, by the way. Wisconsin was not like, make sure, go find an internship. Like I was
work for free?
Yeah, I was so walking blind. I can't even explain. And so she was like, oh yeah, I work at this film festival. I'm like, great, I'm bored. Do they want me? I'll do whatever. And then I stayed there for 19 years. So I started at Slamdance as an intern, and then I moved into shorts programming and really liked it and realized, oh, actually I was programming, because in Wisconsin I ran the play circle, like our little art cinema in the Union. I'm like, oh, I called it picking films, but yes, programming. That's what I like. Okay, good. And then so eventually I ran the Slamdance narrative team for about 13 years, and then was eventually the exec director of the festival for 2 or 3 years, and produced the festival as well. And actually Slamdance, the other thing I fell in love with, Slamdance has programmed, our team is entirely consists of other filmmakers, mostly alumni filmmakers. So it's very different than other festivals, and it's done in a really sort of diplomatic roundtable, democratic, one of those sort of things. I had to be diplomatic as the team leader. It's a democratic process. Right. But Slamdance's whole focus is first-time directors. So all of our competition slate is. So yeah, Oren Pelly, I programmed Lynn Shelton's first film.
Did you do Drake Doremus's
Drake Doremus's first one? Yep.
Well, your face is lighting up. Like, clearly you really loved those films.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about being at a Discovery Festival, which is primarily what I program, it's a whole trusting your gut thing. So it's twofold. One, you feel like you've been part of this film even if you didn't help create it.
Sure.
When
I mean,
it gets there, because
making
you've
careers, right?
Right, and you fought for it, and then two, when they do succeed, you're sort of like, oh, I was a doula for their birth.
Sure, yeah.
How wonderful. But like Sean Baker, I programmed Sean's first film in 2006, and and to have him go on and make the incredible films he has. So the Russo brothers, Mark Forrester, like the amount of people who've come through.
What? You did his first movie?
Yeah. That was the Slamdance of it. And then again, being at a festival meant that it was sort of seasonal. So I was still able to be in production. And that's when I was really working music video and festivals back and forth.
Wait, so are you still involved with Slamdance now?
No, I've been at Sundance for the past couple of years. So I am now at Sundance.
I was going to say Liz Manischel. I can't believe I didn't
Liz,
lead
yeah,
with Liz.
of course.
Liz is a dear friend.
Oh, she's such a great human.
Yeah, she's the best.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And Liz, I actually weirdly met through Film Independent. I've programmed the LA Film Festival for the last 10 years and was the senior programmer for the last 4 or something. And then I'm still at Film Independent as producer in residence. And then I've also, for the last 4 years, programmed Gina Davis's Bentonville Film Festival, which is a concentration on really looking for women and people of color and other underrepresented voices, both in front of and behind the camera.
Wait, what are you doing at Sundance? Programming also?
Yes, programming. I'm in the episode. We started an episodic section 3 years ago now.
And that's like TV?
It's TV.
Or web or...
It's primarily TV. Every year like blurs together so quickly.
I think the early stuff was like...
But we showed Wild Wild Country was one of our premieres, which was this incredible documentary series.
And so do you show just the first couple episodes, or how does that work?
It's a split. So some of them, we have a...
You guys did OJ.
Oh, yeah, that was
the
this
people
year.
Against...
And this year we did Finding Neverland as well.
Yeah.
The Michael Jackson.
Yeah. But like a marathon screening where you were just like, oh, we're going to watch all of this OJ.
Finding Neverland, is it like a miniseries?
The Michael Jackson, well, it's, it was like a 3 hours, 4 hours. The one that came out this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like a 4-hour movie, but it's an episodic.
No, it was episodic.
But you showed it all at once.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then these are all documentaries, but we showed a lot of scripted stuff too. But the Wu-Tang documentary, which ended up at Showtime, which I love. The episodics, there's something great about the structure of that. It's a different approach to how they're setting up the storytelling. And I like that it flexes different muscles for the artists. And so we show to us what represents the best of the best. So we'll have, we have independent pilots. One of the scripted pilots that we showed this year called Work in Progress just got picked up with Lily Wachowski as an EP on it.
What's the lowest budget, least famous thing that you program? Like, do you like
at Sundance?
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't have heard of it, but like It's hard. It's a whole range. Like we also showed different lengths. We showed the entirety of State of the Union, which was starred Chris O'Dowd and Gone Girl. Help me, Rosamund Pike.
She's like one of those, like a pretty blonde actress who I could not pick her out.
She's great. She's so Hitchcockian.
Yeah.
And it's written by Nick Hornsby. It was directed by.
Right.
Well, you guys all have access
But I mean,
to the
could
internet.
somebody, like if Matt and I made a show, is
Yes.
there a way that
So,
could get into Sundance, or do we
yes,
have to
because
be
that's
Nick
like
Hornby?
work in progress. The one I just mentioned that got picked up, that was one that was made by this gay comic out of Chicago who's been working on it for years. It's like, it's not someone who's like, yes, I'm fresh out of film school. Like, she's been honing her one-woman play for a long time, which this is based on. And so we get a lot of sort of independently made pilots. And episodics is an area that I find really exciting. It's why I'm so psyched to do it at Sundance. So many people who are making films actually kind of want to be making TV, but you've never really thought of it that way. And I know for us at Sundance, the hope is like that it could be the same sort of marketplace for new creatives in the same way that film is, so that people who are thinking that more in episodic structure, people who are, I built this whole world and I have a whole Bible with the whole first 4 seasons arced out, those are the things we're looking for as well. So we definitely have ones that we played that you don't know who they are and you don't know the actors in them.
Right, it's not Wu-Tang Clan.
No, those were the ones that I remembered because they're the ones that I was saying is like all of our pitching points during.
Sure.
But the ones that really excite me, it's the same thing. It's the discovery of it.
Right.
When you're looking at new pilots, what's the thing that like makes you excited about them, that makes you want to program a pilot?
So the thing that gets me, it's twofold. I keep saying it's twofold, but I guess I'm a bilateral thinker. Who knew? Now what an educational experience for me. One of them is the idea of directorial voice or authorial voice. So much with indie film is this way as well, but I find that almost to its detriment. Like, we'll get a lot of first-time filmmakers who've made this story that's about something really significant to them, and therefore they sometimes are not as tight with it as they should be. They're not as looking at the storytelling. They're looking more at like, no, but that's how it really was.
Oh, that's how it really happened.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than being in the screenwriting workshop and being like, well, this is bad, and then being like, well, this is how it really went down.
Yeah.
And
You're like,
well, okay,
great.
now.
Well, now we're writing it, so let's do it better.
Or sometimes I'll be like, I don't really believe this. And they're like, no, that really happened. I'm like, well, then write it in a way that makes me believe in it if it really happened.
And so in film, that definitely happens all the time and you've saved up and you have this one big story, but I think that can fall flat. Whereas with episodic, if it's either webisodes, if you're looking at people making 4 or 5 minute or 10-minute pieces, or more traditional kind of 22-minute length, I think there's a requirement because of the structure to do that editing, to tighten in a way that with a film, it can kind of stay loosey-goosey. You're like, I've got 90 minutes. I'll have this 10-minute scene with my dad that really happened.
Sure.
Like,
that would be a whole episode of your web series.
right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we can't do a whole episode with him just talking to his dad. So you have to fine-tune it. So I think it takes episodics, and I'm saying that sort of interchangeably both for what people think of as web series. I don't really like the term web series only because it has such a early 2000s.
Yeah,
Sure.
call it digital.
Right.
Digital
Yeah.
series.
Digital series. Yeah.
You
Well,
say web series and you think,
like just terrible toaster effects and just a really rudimentary filmmaking. And I think there's people out there doing really sophisticated and playful work that's
Independently.
just happens to be episodic structure.
Right.
So, like I said, the fold one of my twofold is having that distinctive voice. Because, for years, what we've gotten from television has been something that's been so heavily edited through broadcasters, through their weird structure of, I got something picked up for pilot, and now 50,000 people are going to give me notes
and
on
standards and practices.
Right. And by the time we see a lot of TV shows, they've been almost euthanized. Like the whole soul has been sucked out of them. And
you just sand all the edges off.
yeah. And so having the ability to just put that forth yourself, if it's online, if it's through festivals, it's the same thing as with indie film, but a lot more people, I think, are taking that on. And I encourage it. I think it's a smart move for showing the kind of storytelling you're able to do, especially if you want to maybe end up in TV. Maybe that kind of structure works better for you. So that was the one fold, is the kind of what I'm looking for, is the
voice.
uniqueness and the voice, but also what is the story telling me that I'm not already seeing? That's always what we're asking, right? Like I've seen, is this a workplace story of... is there a receptionist that has a crush on the guy that works at the desk? Like there's shows that I've seen iterations for years, but then this is something of, it's brand new, like that I've never seen. For example, I'll use the work in progress again.
Wait, is this part of the first fold still?
This is still the first fold.
Okay.
Man, they really, my two folds really sort of blur together, but I'm sure I'll come back to the second fold at some point. But but again, in terms of that, the authorial voice, that work in progress, which I'll just use as my example for this. Abby, and it's killing me, I don't remember her last name, but the creator of it, and she stars in it. And like I said, she's older gay comic who lives in Chicago. And so that's a unique worldview. I don't see a lot of TV shows. And her show is structured about her dating and finding her way around. She starts dating a trans guy, which she's never done before. And so that is a whole, and it's really funny. And also, she's really depressed. I'm like, it's so funny. You guys, she's super depressed.
It sounds like a cable show, honestly, though.
It does.
Right? Yeah.
But all of those things that's not going to come through your traditional, like, I'm going into a network and I'm going to pitch. So I've got this older suicidal lesbian and she meets a trans waiter, right? So those are but when you see it, she has such a voice and it's so funny and it's so unique, and the insights you get from it and the talking points. And the twofold of why I think episodic is the structure of it. I'm looking for something that doesn't just feel like a short film that you've called an episodic. I want it to have the idea of, there are so many interesting narrative threads here, that you have built an interesting worldview. I get where I am. Even in 4 minutes, you can see that with things. I get where I am. I haven't seen it before. I want to know where they're going to go. Where's she going to go? What's he going to do? Like something that's setting up, that's what you want. And that has this tone, but it also has this possibility to it. Or else it's just a short film. Yeah. Short films are great, but it's not the same thing.
Different deal. You know what I love about this, just kind of on maybe a more broad level, is that I feel like independent cinema is economically, business-wise, is like kind of in a weird place right now, where it's hard to make money in independent movies, right? Like you kind of just have to be a rich person or no one in order to get them bankrolled currently, right? It's never been easier to make a movie, but it's still pretty darn hard to find the finances and make money on it, right? And so I think a lot of the filmmakers who have an eye towards smaller, more intimate, more offbeat stories, if you don't want to do an Avengers movie or a Mission Impossible movie, indie movies used to be the thing that you could do. Now that that's going away, TV is kind of bubbling up, right? But there's so many gatekeepers, as you were saying before. And so what I love about Sundance doing these episodic programming slates is like it gives you a chance to do the independent thing that makes money, and maybe you actually will be able to find a marketplace for it.
Well, the hope too, it's in the same way, like with Slamdance, with the examples I gave you of directors whose first work we programmed, you probably never saw the first feature that we programmed,
sure.
But then you've seen subsequent work of theirs. And it's the same thing with episodics. It's interesting. You may not ever see, it's going to be my go-to, but like you may never see the pilot of Work in Progress that we showed at the festival, but luckily now you will get to see. And it's also the voice of it. Like the Broad City women created their whole characterization, the whole flow of the show. High Maintenance was another show that developed online.
I love comparing those two though, because Broad City, I remember when that show was picked up for past pilot was greenlit for series, there were I swear to God, there were episodes of their web series that had 300 views.
Yeah.
Like no one was watching that show before it became a TV show. Whereas High Maintenance had a following.
True.
And
right.
People were excited about it. That High Maintenance was the show that people would be like, oh, have you seen this cool web series?
Right. People were paying on Vimeo to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I did, actually.
Seems like something
But
you
you
do.
support an artist.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that's nice about them as well, and that stands out and maybe is something that's more of a thread in episodic, is the idea, if you're a creator that also is an on-screen presence, episodics might make sense for you. Because, again, many people make indie films that they're the lead of, but it is cost prohibitive. Even if you're making, I've made not to brag, but I produced an indie that was like under $200,000, which means it's painful, and like half the people are there as favors, and pain. But not to brag, but that's still,
my life has been hell for 3 weeks too.
You guys get not sleeping, right?
Yeah, sure.
But with an episodic, if you're doing it that way, it can be more manageable. You might be able to split up what that is. You can budget per episode and do as you go. And again, maybe you're going to be the star because you're cheapest, and so you can find somebody better once you make it. I don't know. I just think there's a lot of potential there, and there's a lot of labs, and Sundance has a great episodic lab, and I think IFP does as well. But there are things a lot of festivals have, just unique episodic submissions as well. So
I had a pilot at the Slamdance. We got a second place in the Slamdance pilot competition.
Congrats.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah.
It is blowing my mind that there is a festival option for
pilots,
independent digital series, we'll say.
Yeah, a lot of festivals have them. Bentonville, which I also program, has one.
Yeah.
Can I ask, at Sundance specifically, like how many submissions you guys got this past year and how many you programmed?
Well, Sundance is tricky overall. So overall, there's about 14,000 submissions for Sundance.
You're talking across features.
Across features. Right. So that's around 4,000 features, I'd say. And then 9,000. Is that math? Yep.
Well, that's 13,000.
10,000 some shorts. And so the episodics, I think we were around 1,000.
Boy.
1,500.
For episodic.
Better odds, that's true, yeah.
Yeah. It is better. That's what I'm saying. Like, it is better odds, but that's why you have to actually be making an episodic. But I also personally think the life of an episodic, because, we all have friends who have like a short online, but just a one-off short. It's like, oh, okay, I'll get my friends to watch it. An episodic, if you're doing, it's like a podcast. Like, you're building a community, you're finding people, you're putting things up regularly. A podcast has almost a social media feel to it. So again, in terms of if you're trying to grow something for yourself, it can be another unique way in.
I always say I did 2 seasons of my breakout web series was this show called Squaresville, and people didn't really start watching until the end of the first season, and it was like, oh, finally, like,
oh no,
now we've got traction. Those first 10,000 fans are the hardest to get by far, and then the snowball starts to roll down the hill. But like those first 10,000, you really have to claw to get them.
Yes,
it's probably nowadays it's probably more like 20 or 50,000 before you can get real traction, but. So this is so fascinating. You've got all of this awesome insight in terms of like what it takes to get programmed at all of these incredible festivals, discovery festivals, like the cream of the crop, everything in between. But you're also a producer. So how has your festival life informed your producerial life?
Well, I've been rejected at plenty of the festivals that I work at.
Sure, I think
Sundance.
That's the.
Wait, you can't program your own movie?
No, and actually I submitted to Sundance before I started programming there. But I did know them all, and they still rejected me. That's fine. No hard feelings.
Do you, as a programmer, do you know why? Like,
I always, yes. I know why. Yeah, of course. I knew why it would be hard, and I knew why I thought... like some of my films had a better chance than others. And I know those films made it further as well. The thing with programming that I think is super important for filmmakers to know in terms of how it's helped me and what I would pass along, it's so subjective. It's such a crapshoot. Like, it's a huge numbers game. If you're aiming for a discovery festival, like I said, like Sundance had 9,000 some short submissions. And I think we showed 100 shorts, 150. Like, you could be a senator easier, like,
right.
And I mean a U.S. senator, not even a state senator, like a proper one of 50 representatives. But I think
maybe 100.
Maybe I said 50. Yeah, no, I only acknowledge one from each state.
Sure.
That's my thing.
I believe in that.
I said 50. I was like, I think I've done math wrong here. But the idea of it being a numbers game is both, I think, it can be daunting. Like every time you submit to a festival, it's a total leap of faith. It can be a pain in the ass expensive leap of faith because you almost always have to pay a submission fee. You're entrusting work to people. I mean, think of any screening you've ever gone to. I'm always telling the director, like, welcome them and sit down. No disclaimers. No,
Sure.
right?
Yeah,
Like the immediate thing of of the apologies or
And by the way, we don't care about your budget or how long it took you to shoot this.
Yes. So this would be good, but I needed my dad to come in and play the older man at last minute. You're like, no, thank them and sit down.
Yeah, I don't even want to hear about like a temp sound mix or something.
Right? Yeah. No, and all I ever watch temp sound.
Of course.
Like Avid outputs. Yeah. So
Which do a pass on your temp sound mix, right?
Most people do. People get real twitchy, but it's the same thing. Like especially if you're looking at something for Sundance, or LA we had a ton of premieres, so we're looking at work that's still being worked on. But even if it's finished, people are trusting that it's going off, it's going to be in safe hands, and they're not there to give their disclaimers. So there's this. It's just hard. Like artists, nobody wants to be judged. Artists definitely don't like to be judged, but you're in this weird position of having to be judged. And then you're not entirely sure, like, because Vimeo, it doesn't really show. Everyone thinks they can see if someone's watched it, but it doesn't really show, like, once we're watching things like within Film Freeway or without a box or whatever.
That makes me feel better because I've got a film that's been rejected from a couple things recently, and I'm like, well, I've got 2 hits on this Vimeo link.
Because once it goes, it screws up the system. Like once it goes through the software, because I've had that happen.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact, I know who's watched it. Like it doesn't mean anything. Or I've had people say it to me, and I'm like, I'm the human that watched
Your friend who keeps avoiding eye contact every time you bring it up.
yeah. But I'm like, that's me. I personally watched that.
Yeah.
You say no one's watched it, but I can promise you that I've watched it. So you're trusting that they'll watch it. You're hoping that they'll get it. But it comes down to this thing of, are you up against another movie that's about a prepubescent girl coming of age story with dad problems?
Yes.
Probably you are.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
And so
And they're both probably great, you know?
Yes. And it's this hard thing of knowing, as a programmer, I'm looking for good films that are memorable, that, like I said, have this authorial voice, that have something distinctive about them. What is this person as an artist saying that's different than what I've already seen? Also, is this someone that I think has more stories in them? Are we going to hopefully help launch their career? Could we be a stepping stone to someone? Or are they like a one and done, and now they're going to like sail around the world? So you're looking at a lot of things, and then you're looking.
And you can tell that, you think, from watching their movie.
You have to. I mean, that's what you develop. It's fun. Yeah. And your tastes change. The more so you brought up how many films I watch. Well, for each festival, I'll probably watch 300 some features. At least, around 300 features a festival.
And that's after they've been filtered through other people that have watched them.
Hold on, 300 features a festival, and you program how many right now?
3. Yeah. 3 a year.
So 900 movies.
I'm just watching films all year, but it's
900 movies a year.
Well, no, it's like 2 a day.
It's more than that because I also host movie podcasts, so I have to watch all the new releases too.
Did you watch any movies today?
I did.
How many did you watch?
Oh wait, really?
I watched 2 movies today.
Like festival submissions?
No, for podcasts.
Oh, good.
But no, I'm not currently. I'm thankfully not thankfully, but you need these programming breaks, because that's the other thing is, I will say, the programmers that I know at all of the festivals, we take it very seriously. A lot of us are filmmakers ourselves. Like, even if I don't like a film, I know what it takes for someone to submit it and what they're entrusting me with. And I also, every single time I start a film, I want it to be good. Like, that's what we're doing, right? We're discovering people and we're discovering films. So if you are watching a film with the hope that it's bad so you can get to the next film, then don't do it. Like, then you're not in the right job.
I mean, what sort of maniac would watch 900 movies a year and not love them to death? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no bigger fan in the world.
Well, there's a ton of them that I don't but that's part of what you're developing as well. And it's aided me as a producer. A lot of people get there because they read so many scripts. So this, I think, is just a variation of that. But I do, it is a thing, like with LA Film Fest, for example. So most film festivals, when you submit, films are seen typically by 2 different screeners, and those are people who are kind of starting their programming careers. And they give them a numeric value and like a little write-up, and then anything that gets higher than whatever score goes to here. For me, because I was in charge of our American Indies, so which is a very large category.
Right.
So narratives.
Potentially the biggest.
Yes. So basically, I also went through all of the submissions and read about them, and anything, like, to be blunt, like I watched anything by a female director. I watched anything with a person of color. I watched any queer stories, like anything that would stand out. If it was someone from a unique part of the country that doesn't normally, like, we had this film about miners. I'm like, oh, we don't got a lot of that. Like, I get a lot of LA and New York stories, but so I would go through and like make sure, even if they gotten lower scores, because a lot of times screeners, when you're first starting, what you're used to thinking of a good film is like either your Oscar caliber or your
it's
indie
like Good Will
Spirit.
Hunting or something.
Right, exactly. Like, oh, I really love, I can't, I lost it. I can't even make fun of it if I can't reference it right away. What's the Zach Braff movie?
Oh, Garden State?
Garden State.
Ooh.
Like, I really love Garden State. So like, I'm looking for, do you know what I mean? Like that kind of you know, it's so unique, and it's got a love story, but he's sad. Like,
I mean, I've always thought about those automatic syncs that turn on by themselves, and he really captured that in a movie.
It's like what the cinema world always needed. But it's that thing, when you're starting out, that's your taste level. Whereas I look at things, and it's the Malcolm Gladwell, like 10,000 hours. Like, I've definitely watched more than 10,000.
Which you've done in like 1 year.
Yeah. So, but there's something about that of what I feel. I can watch a film and I'll know pretty quickly, but I always give every film at least the first act, and then I'll always go to the end to see if it changed my mind and then go back. But I swear I generally know in like the first 3 minutes if it's going to be for me or not.
Do you ever watch movies? I do this on YouTube. Do you ever watch them in like double speed?
Oh no. Because the pacing.
That just hurt my feelings.
Yeah. Because the pacing is so hard. And when I say
that's what I would do if I was a programmer.
And when I say the first act thing, those are only films that have already been seen by other people. I do want to stress that. We would never have anything that like someone just was very glib with. It's more for me when I get to my like bucket of things.
Right.
Because also, again, in that first act is when I'm going to know, oh, no, we have another film about a 13-year-old girl coming of age with that problem. So, and this one is definitely not comparable to it. Yeah, I don't even remember what the question was, but man, did I get a lot of words in.
No, we were talking about, so as a producer, you were submitting movies to your own festivals, and did you know why they made it or didn't make it?
Yes. So, and not when I was there. That sounds super, or if I was not part of anything, because I did have films play at LA Film Fest when I was there, but I was not allowed to be part of the decision making for that. Yeah.
That's why there's a number of programmers.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And I wasn't the...
You're like, we had this movie's from Andrea Clark.
Yes, you don't even know her. Don't even worry about her. No, we have like a director of programming and stuff. So like, there's people that outranked me that could make the call. So interestingly, I've made 3 features, and all of them were directed by directors whose previous work I programmed at a different festival.
Sure, I mean that can't be a coincidence, though.
No, not at all. It's interesting because once I started the first one, it's a film called The Last Time You Had Fun, and I made with my friend Mo Perkins.
Oh, who's been on the podcast?
Mo has not.
Yeah,
she's a really good friend of mine. Oh, that's awesome. I programmed A Quiet Little Marriage at Slamdance, and it won our jury award. And I met Mo, and she was wonderful. And we got along and had a lot of similarities. And actually, I brought her on. She joined the programming team. And so that's the kind when you...
Slamdance.
Yes, because our programmers are primarily alumni filmmakers. And you get even more of the sense. And interestingly, Mo and I actually disagree on films a lot, and we did when we were programming. But how we talked about them, I just really admired her and thought she had such a great film. And then her husband, Hal Haberman, actually wrote the script for The Last Time You Had Fun. And she brought it to me and I read it. Actually, before that, we did a short film together with Amber Benson for PBS. So we did this little sci-fi and worked really well together on that. So yes, so I saw Mo's work. I liked her as a human. I really liked the script. I knew how she talked about film because of our time programming together. So I was like, all right, I'm in. What do you want? And then it was like 3 years. Because basically when you're making an indie film, you're like signing up to be in a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
And on that movie, were you like finding money?
I was the sole
getting things
producer
made?
on that. Thankfully, we had most of the fundraising had already been done. Mo also is a natural producer, but she's a director. She doesn't like the producer credit because that's not what she wants to be doing. But when I came on, the fundraising had mostly been done. And so I was developing the script. We were doing a lot of, and I can't say enough, like people should do a million table reads. Nobody does enough of them. They're free. It will change how you hear the script. You will see holes that if you don't see them until you've already shot, it's free. Like
and also people generally love to do it. You know, you feel great to like spend a Sunday afternoon eating your friend's pizza and helping them out.
Yes.
You know,
get your friends to table reads.
some good notes feels great to get off your chest. And then you're good to go.
It's so much easier. Like it's really hard to read scripts. So I get sent a good amount of scripts. And it's dumb. I have one sitting in my inbox right now. It's been there for 2 weeks. Every other day, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I could just read it, but for some reason you're like, oh, and then you start and you're fine. Then you read it. A table read, poof, knock out 12 of those in one go.
Yeah,
like,
look at that. It's like going to a party and also doing homework at the same time.
Getting great feedback.
Yeah.
Table reads are the best. But yes, so we developed it together. We did all of the minutia of, and we shot in LA. So it was figuring out like our schedule for our budget. Because we did that for, I think, around 500, 600,000. It's been a few years now. But getting all of that together and then figuring out, truthfully with that one, it's the one where we had the most cast in it. And that was a doozy. We ended up with Eliza Coupe, Dimitri Martin, Kyle Bornheimer, and Mary Elizabeth Ellis, who are lovely and are wonderful, and Jimmy Simpson and Charlene Yee. I'm just going to list our whole cast now.
That's a great cast.
It is a good cast. I love that film. Please go watch it.
And how did you get them through a casting director?
We got them through Mary Elizabeth.
Can you just promise them a slot in Sundance? Is that like
no? Because this was before I was at Sundance.
At Slamdance.
And I also could not promise them that. No. We didn't even submit. I never submitted to Slamdance when I was there because the difference, like me at Sundance, I'm a cog. Like Slamdance, I was very much the head of for a long time. I did not submit anything.
Like,
it would be inappropriate.
It would be inappropriate.
Guess what? I've discovered myself again.
Yes. Great news, you guys. Yeah. Again, it wouldn't have been eligible for competition because I was clearly not working with first-time directors because I'd programmed their previous work, but I didn't submit for out of competition either. It just seemed icky.
Right. Yeah.
Icky's the technical word, right?
Yeah.
Icky?
Yeah.
Yes. So working with Mo and getting the cast that we got was how a lot of things work. Mary Elizabeth had starred in Mo's first film and is a friend of ours and read it. Her agent really liked it. We ended up going through her agency for a lot of it. So sort of indirect packaging, but none of the like...
Packaging fees.
Packaging with like bold black letters.
They were just doing their jobs.
They were just doing their jobs. Yes.
Yeah.
And then, but getting recommendations from other people who knew us, or like Charlene had come through our friend Martin Starr, who was in the short that we made with Amber. I know you've talked about this on the show before of like how you can entice bigger names that you might. It's a lot of it is the people that. Like we had two much bigger names attached for which is again with like the fundraising. Like we had up till 3 weeks before we were going to shoot. We had two much bigger names attached. And then they both fell out very quickly. And it was very horrifying. I almost lost Mo forever. But part of what had attracted them in the first place was the roles that we had offered them were not like the kind of roles they get. And I think that's something that all actors are into. Right. People want to be challenged, especially if they're like, are you not a dum-dum? Are you a cool person, not a dum-dum? And you're going to let me do this different thing. So
Right. And I'm curious, your other films, did you find the filmmakers in a similar fashion?
yes. So the second film I did is called Lake Los Angeles, and it's directed by Mike Ott. And I had programmed Mike. It was actually the third film in what he calls the Pear Blossom Highway trilogy. And so he had a previous film that had won or been nominated for a Spirit Award, and then a follow-up. And so this was the third one in it, and they were all sort of immigrant stories. Lake Los Angeles, interestingly, is entirely in Spanish and is about this 11-year-old girl who's been smuggled over the border, and she's waiting at a safe house, sort of. And there's a coyote, which is the name of the guys who kind of oversee these. And he's this Cuban immigrant. And basically her father never comes to pick her up. So she disappears into the desert. And it's this kind of bilateral story of the two of them. But it's an immigrant story with a really fanciful, beautiful side to it. Actually, it was shot by Mike Guliakis, who did It Follows. And,
Oh, great. Yeah.
and a lot of other stuff that I can't think of right now, but he's incredible. He just did an enormous studio film that I was
feel like after It Follows, he must have just blown up.
Yeah. So I had met Mike and Otsko, who was the writer and other producer. And that's the one that I was saying was a much bigger team and was like shot in the desert. And Mike was a professor at Cal Arts. So we had this like squadron of younger, like super hungry.
Love it.
It was
It's like scrappy crew members.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it couldn't have gotten made without it, but it's really beautiful. I'm also really proud of that one. Like it turned out really haunting, which was nice because that one I was less involved up front with the story creation and much more once the edit started of notes. So that was one that I always say with Mike's films, his two previous films, because he had all of this access to these young filmmakers, and they were much more run and gun. I like to say I was like the adult on the ship. So I was the one of like all the paperwork and the union stuff and
Don't
contracts.
hang out the car while you're shooting, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically it was, how do we make this movie more professional?
And do you find yourself like when you're working on your own movies and working with directors saying like, last year we saw like 25 different movies that did the same thing. Like let's do
100%.
something fresh.
100%. I say that at the script level. I say that in edit. Yeah, I'll say the whole time because it's also, people don't always know what the marketplace is. And I say that like there's not really a marketplace in the sense of like, oh, you guys, there's so many pots of gold out here waiting for you. But I do know what's being made. And that's the kind of thing of, I have zero interest. There's a whole swath of like, I'm not interested in stories about like 4 college-age white dudes on a road trip, probably to take someone's dead dad's ashes somewhere. Like, there's certain movies. Sorry, man.
Cancel that
Sorry,
submission.
Oren. Put that right into the trash. But there's
Dead Mom's Ashes. Would that work?
Oh, sure. Just switch up the ashes. But there's stories that when you're starting your career as a filmmaker, you're in your early 20s, there are things to you that feel huge, right? Like these are
they're resonant.
big stories to you.
Taking your dad's ashes across the country is like a big thing for your,
And it
losing your
should be.
virginity before the end of college.
Yes, college. Nice. I think you meant to say high school. Most of those movies did that for high school, but you do you, man.
Yeah, man.
No, college. That's what we meant. But yeah, there's movies that I've seen so many of, or the relationship within them. I'm like, I know that you think that this funny guy in your crew is like necessary and a voice and actually he's not. He's definitely not as funny as you think he is.
Yeah.
Part of why you in real life found that guy funny is stuff you're not going to convey in a movie because it's like,
right.
Oh,
He's still funny.
He
but
makes
like,
orange juice jokes forever. And so when he brings up, there's things I'm not going to get contextually, or in like real life funny versus movie funny is not the same thing.
Totally.
So like for me, for Mike, and then the other film I did with Amber Seeley, and then the other producer on that, it's called No Light and No Land Anywhere. It's exec produced by Miranda July. So like that one was made in a way that we had this sort of like cachet behind it. And Amber as well. I had programmed a previous film of hers at LA. But they're all things like all of those are films that I wasn't seeing at the festival or anywhere else. Like Mo wanted to make a film about a bunch of adults out for one night. It was sort of like the teen hijink movie of like, we have a party limo and we're going to do a night, except for they're all adults with very adult problems.
Right.
And it happened to be a comedy. The Lake Los Angeles is about immigration and a young girl like being left alone in a country and how she's coping with that. And Lake Los Angeles is about this British woman who's looking for her estranged father in Los Angeles who left her when she was 3. They're all things that I hadn't seen before. I hadn't seen the kind of filmmaking before. And so I knew that there would be a place, hopefully in the festival sphere, in the marketplace, that would make them stand out and make them feel necessary in a way that a lot of films don't always feel.
Well, you know what's interesting to me, though, is that, I think that it's easy for you to, you kind of like wink when you say like the marketplace or like the festival, but that having that insight is so valuable. Like that, it is the first step for so many films. You can't be a part in the marketplace if you're not at those festivals.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's not strictly true, obviously. I don't want to...
No, there's definitely different ways in. But
there's a lot of ways in. But also, we all know that, big festivals are an important part of that equation for people.
Right.
And so that is a really special gift for a producer, you know? Do you find that there are other people kind of in your world that are also producing as well?
There aren't a lot of programmers that produce. I think I'm a rarity. Part of it's because I came up through Slamdance, which is people with filmmaking backgrounds. For like at Sundance, one of my favorite things about their programmers is their programmer. That's what they want to do. They're film lovers who like, this is the year-round people. Like Charlie Sextro is a great version of this. Like he's not interested in making films. He loves being an enthusiastic gatekeeper and helping people that way and finding things and championing them. I think too, it helps a lot. It helped us a lot for, like I said, the submission process can be really anxiety inducing for a lot of filmmakers. So when we were at that stage, for a lot of them, it was my job of like reminding like, this is a numbers game. It's not a reflection of the film not being strong. We didn't get into this because of this. I'm sure that this will be, and like figuring out our plan of attack. For Lake Los Angeles, we had 2 different invites for our world premiere at the same time, and it became this really difficult decision.
High class problems, but
right,
but really, it must feel
very
like.
Much so.
Are you allowed to tell us? I mean, you don't have to be specific if you don't want to, but I think what a lot of people wonder is the movie, my first movie premiered at AFI, but we were talking to Sundance and we knew like my producer knew Trevor really well. And he's like, we like it. We just kind of have to see what else we have, and so we kind of took AFI because it was like the sure thing, right? Like how, can you give some advice on like how to choose those things? Like when you're invited to 2 festivals to premiere, how do you choose which one?
In general, I will say if you don't know, you should know that your premiere, your world premiere, is a currency of sorts. You only get the one.
It's the question people ask.
Yeah.
It's like asking where you went to school or something like
exactly.
that. Yeah.
It's also it speaks to a lot of things. Like there's a language of festivals in the sense of programmers are a rarity of I'm being tasked with having an opinion about a film in a vacuum. I watch something, I decide if it's the merits that I'm looking for. I don't like to say good because that's so dismissive of things we're not programming, but I'm watching something, I'm deciding if it fits what we're looking for, I'm putting it forth to the team, I'm arguing for it or against it, and I'm putting the slate together. And I say rarity because pretty much every other stage, there are like 15 people who are like, who liked this? What reviews did it get? Where did it play? Did someone else at our agency like it? Nobody likes to be the person in the vacuum making a decision. So I think it's a good skill to have as a programmer, And it's also, you just have to be trusting in your own gut constantly. And with that, the reason it means that it's important what festival you're choosing is because you're also marking it of, if I get into South by, then it will mean that when I start going to regional festivals or niche or small or whatever, that they'll look at it and be like, oh, South by liked it. So I don't even have to trust my own gut at this stage.
Right.
Like
Sure.
these
It's
people
bona
that
fide.
I look up to look at it. And same with distributors, same with the people who are going to fund my next film. Oh, you got into this. So it's currency to a certain extent. There's also, you only have the one premiere. I mean, you have, technically, if you're an international film, you have like your North American premiere, your but your world premiere,
Yeah.
is sort of the thing. And the number of people that don't always know that is pretty big. It's why both at Slamdance and at LA in the last couple of years, because we sort of changed we had a hard ruling at LA for a long time. It was only world premieres. But one of the reasons Slamdance has been open to both and why we opened it up at LA, there's generally like one great film in the bunch that is like from someone working from nowhere who like played Sheboygan, who played their like hometown festival, so that like the people that contributed money could see it.
They grew up with the programmer, and it's like everybody from town.
Or they don't even know the program. It's like they don't even know what it means.
Sure.
It's just like, oh, we wanted to play it in this place where like my family could come.
Yeah.
And what it means on a programming level is I look at it and I'm like, oh, it doesn't even have a world premiere status. It's not even. It doesn't even meet our like status, our eligibility status. For both Slamdance and then eventually at LA, we loosened that because I don't want to not support this film that didn't know that it wasn't.
Right. But what if it's like not Sheboygan, but like a CineQuest or a Newport
that's
Beach or something?
That's a different thing. That's just, you made your decision. Like for us, it was only, because you're also looking at a festival, you're very conscious of being a gatekeeper. You're very much, we were always looking at it in the sense of, are we going to help this film? And when you're coming down to like judging films against each other, could this, if these two are exact same like level, like they have the same number of champions in the room, same level of like artistry, same level of like they're brand new, whatever. Does one of them need help more than the other?
Interesting.
So it's all part of what goes into the conversation of things, because like this makes it sound like I'm like, oh, I'm the fairy godmother just granting wishes. But again,
you kind of are.
The reality side of it is also for the festival, we're hoping you will become a success. And now you're ours. Sure. We've branded you. Like for Slamdance, like the people that I'm naming, I'm like, I get to say that forever. Yes, I programmed Sean Baker's first film, which is exciting to me because he's a great director who's made this really fancy stuff.
And even Paranormal Activity, like, was famously passed on by like so many people, right?
Hugely. That one was really funny because I was supposed to do the Q&A of that film, and I watched it from the back with Oren, and he was like, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? He's like, I'm just going to let them leave. So he thought it would like take them out of it because the whole thing of that movie is so the immersive quality is forever funny to me that he was like, just let them go. But yeah, so that side of it, of that there's currency to your premiere. But on the other hand, I don't think anything should be that precious because it can also be really daunting if you've gone through, and you know, a lot of people, you kind of start your year, if you're like, all right, I'm going to submit to Sundance first. I'm going to get that in. I'm going to get that in August. I didn't get in. It's November. I'm aiming for South by. I'm aiming for Tribeca. Like if you have these like goalposts of these are the major ones, like once you've hit those, at a certain point, it's figuring out, all right, we are not a discovery film in this kind of way, but our film still has merit. What kind of home can we find for it?
Yeah.
So then it's, you know, I always recommend like figuring out, are there bigger regional festivals near you? You should always like go through your key actors and your key department heads, find out where everyone's from, find out where everyone went to college, and submit to those festivals. And when you submit, write them directly and be like, we're so excited because our DP and his whole family is from here. And wouldn't you like to have this hometown film? Because those are the kind of things that make a difference. So I think when people are looking at festival strategy and knowing those, and that's why for our films, like when we didn't get into Sundance, it's fine. What's the schedule? What's next for us? Like I personally, most of the two of them, I'm like, we don't even bother submitting to South by, I don't think we're the right flavor for it.
Did you bother, or did you submit or no?
I didn't submit to a few festivals for a few things. Yeah. Because that's the other thing that's free. Festivals all have a different flavor to them. You can look and research for free the other films they've shown. Like one of our films, our other that sounds so rude, but one of our other plans was Sarasota, which is this amazing festival.
We were just talking,
and everyone loves that festival.
Kendall, who did
Goldberg. I programmed her first film. Her film, yes.
Oh, wow. So let's say you didn't get into Sundance or, Toronto, and then you didn't get into Tribeca, you didn't get into South by, and then you didn't get into AFI, and you didn't get kind of the next LA. So now you're like deciding between Miami and Heartland or whatever. Like, does the world premiere status still matter at that point?
Not as much. I mean, once you get past the discovery things, most of the other festivals don't have a premiere status requirement. I'd familiarize yourself if they do.
And I think there are resources online.
Definitely. You can. There's a million.
I think No Film School, or no, pardon me, Short of the Week has a great.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who've sort of compiled them all and have the whole calendar. You can see it laid out. Once you get past the sort of discovery ones, because the reasons you want to be at those are for, like I said before, like whatever comes with being vetted by them, but also they do have more of an industry element. They might have more buyers at them. It might be easier to get a producer's rep, a sales rep on. And there's also a better chance of getting a trade review or any kind of press. That all said, those things are not make or break, ride or die. Like there's plenty of films that sell and do fine that didn't play any festivals or only played small festivals or whatever. So it's also keeping your head above water and like make a good game plan, figure out backups, but like it's not the end of the world if you don't get into. It's like I like that I'm like both like don't go to film school, don't stress about film festivals. Like everything I've ever my whole career, I'm like, oh, don't even worry about it. Don't do that.
Well, I think the reality is, like you're saying, 9,000 people apply, 100 get in. It's like the 8,900 people don't need to quit their, quit filmmaking because of that.
Exactly.
Can I just because I really get excited from these like very concrete examples, but other than 4 college guys like driving across country with their dad's ashes, are there any other trends you've seen recently that you're kind of tired of?
This true story. Years ago, when I was exec director of Slamdance, I was writing, and I was also running programming still. And I wrote, because I was trying to make the programming process more transparent and to give an idea, but also to give some personality to our team, especially at Slamdance. So I was writing this recurring thing of like, please don't do this in your film. Like, I do not but I was always saying it in this jokey way.
Wait, where were you? This was an internal Slamdance?
No. It was like on our like blog or whatever. Oh, cool. This is how long ago it was.
It's not available.
I don't know anywhere. If you got. No. I took these off. But they were also, again, they were very joking, and they were things like, I don't need to see any other films that start on an alarm clock. Like
I knew you were going to say
that. I don't.
That.
Yeah, right. Everybody knows that. Not everybody, actually, because I still see plenty of them.
But
it's the beginning of the day.
Even if you're messing with the trope.
No,
look, if
that's
you're
what
Back
I'm
to
saying.
The Future, yeah, you can do that.
That's what I'm saying is if you can, I would always end this by saying like, you can do any of these things if you're subverting them or playing with them. Just be aware of film language. And film language is a lot of people use the same shortcuts. So find a new shortcut. Or like the staring at the fan to signify ennui, like, fan, like there's just so there's things like that. The stories, there's different stories all the time. It's more there's more a sense of if they have any unique perspective. Like I could describe an entire Wes Anderson film to you and you can be like, yeah, sure. Like, oh, there's this obnoxious kid at high school who's like in love with his teacher. But then you see Rushmore and you're like, oh, I did not see that coming. Yeah, totally. So a lot of it's just, what are you doing that's doing something different with this story?
My lower brow version of that is I used to work at Comedy Central before I quit to start directing full time.
A podcaster.
Before my podcasting. But my example of a bad pitch would be like, me and my funny friends just get fucked up on the weekends and we hate going to our job. and that's Workaholics, and that was a phenomenon.
Right, which is such a good show. That's so
and
funny.
that show is so good, but that is the worst
Yes.
pitch ever.
Yes, it is.
But I guess I heard the version of that pitch, which is it's pretty much everyone in America that does not live in LA or New York, like hates work, and all their kind of fun comes from
All they
do
want to
at
do is
night.
party,
Yeah.
but that's still like people love to party is not like a strong
Right.
pitch.
Or I guess maybe that wasn't a pitch. That was more like why people like that
connect
show.
to it.
Gravitate towards that,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense, but push just a little further.
Yeah, or find an interesting way of telling the same story.
Yeah.
Like it's okay if it's not a totally groundbreaking story, but you do have to
for
break
sure.
ground in some way. you
Yeah.
know?
And what about like genre stuff? Is that like what you would program a sci-fi film or anything
sure.
else?
Well, I love genre. Like I oversaw our genre programming at LA for 3 years. Genre being sort of horror, thriller, sci-fi, fantasy. Slamdance is great because we didn't have a separate slate for it. So we generally always had one of like Paranormal Activity played in competition at Slamdance. It wasn't in like a midnight screening or something. Yeah, I love that stuff. Even that though, right? Like that's the things of you want a unique voice to it. And genre's amazing because there's such a fertile ground for metaphor, like fertile ground, futile. There's such a fertile ground for metaphor.
Drea, I don't know where you're getting at here.
Yeah, no, fertile, the opposite of futile. That, historically, that's what so much great genre has done. And that right now, like, there's great renaissance of film. And I detest the term elevated horror because I think it's insulting to all other horror.
Yeah.
But there is that thing of films that are wanting, like, no, stay with me. You may
Fancy horror?
Yeah,
maybe?
well, like, you may not be into a slasher film, but
Right.
our film has another layer of meaning to it. And yeah, I think that's great. I don't know if that ties or that answers
No,
what
it does
you're-
because I guess what like a lot of what we talked about over the past hour has been how fresh voices are what you need. I think a lot of us feel like maybe our voice isn't fresh, that for the last 50 years, like kind of people like us have been telling stories. And so to me, sometimes when you lean into genre stuff, it's like when you can kind of tell a new story in a different way or the same story in a different way. That said, I just went to this like pitch. I just went and witnessed these like 10 TV pitches, and there were like 2 sci-fi shows during those pitches, and they were exactly the same as the sci-fi show that I was pitching, like, last year.
Oh, painful.
So it's like, oh, even in the genre stuff, it's like really hard to be original. I don't know, especially when you're not based on, IP and it's not based on you, then, I don't know. It's just something I've been thinking a lot about.
Or your idea is that great that it's like transcending other people are having. No, I'm with you on that. And I think though, there is something about, it's hard to creatively push yourself of, oh, how is my idea going to be the newest and freshest? Because it also needs to be something grounded and that you can see the 360 of, like,
right. I can't tell you how many times I'm like pitching a movie and it's kind of like Get Out, but without the racial stuff, like, okay, so it's not a good movie.
Yeah.
So it's a family horror.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess, yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, so cool. Well, yeah, I mean, this has been very illuminating. Thanks so much for talking with us. Wait, before we get into our unpaid endorsements, though, what your podcast?
I host, it's called Who Shot Ya on Maximum Fun. It's a movie podcast. So we do sort of we talk about a different film each week and then have like staff picks and we go through some sort of news stuff. But that's great. Our whole sort of thing is that it's not just straight white guys, because a lot of movie podcasts are.
Sure, listen.
Yeah. I come from a long line of straight white guys. I'm a big fan. But in terms of film criticism, it's nice to have a mix of it.
Yeah.
And then I also co-host Ticklish Business, which is a feminist classic film podcast.
Ticklish Business. What a great title.
Wait, what do you mean by classic film? Like you talk about older
We talk about films from like 1920s through 1970.
So you add to your list of 900 other movies
Yeah,
you're
I'm the worst.
watching.
Like this week, I was like, "Ooh, I need to rewatch Ikuru," which is like 3 hours. It's so long. And then Dark Phoenix, running the gamut.
You're like, I guess, like those long haul truckers, to them, like a 6-hour drive is like no big deal. But to me, it's like death.
Yeah,
That's
no.
like you with movies. You're like,
Yeah.
well, just pop in a 3-hour movie, no problem.
It's no
To me, it's
problem.
like I need 7 shots of espresso to make it through that.
It's the movie that gets me high, man.
Yeah, man.
Well, awesome.
Well, Drea, let's hop into unpaid endorsements.
Unpaid endorsements.
So this is something that I just found out about and have been super excited. But apparently in my research, I was like, this came out like 4 years ago. But basically, did you guys know that Google Maps does underwater street view at the Great Barrier Reef in Australia?
No.
Yes, I'm blowing minds. So it's straight up like how normal Google Maps is, and you go to Street View, and it's like do. That's how I knew where I was going today. I was like, oh, that's what that looks like out front. They have done some in the Galapagos. They have the Great Barrier Reef, and it's underwater 360. It's Street View, but underwater.
Wow.
Like you can see the reefs. There's one you follow
Now I don't have
manta
to go.
ray.
That's great.
Right? You don't have to get whatever shots you would need. You don't need a visa. You don't need to travel in a long haul flight.
Do you need a visa to go to Australia?
Oh, I meant more the Galapagos.
Oh, the Galapagos.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And can you control your
you don't
elevation?
for Australia. Can you
go up above the water, or you have to walk down into the water?
It's similar to it. It'll plug you in underwater already, so like you don't dive in. You know how you can't really in Google Maps, like Street View, you can't kind of get
change your altitude.
taller.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I was like taller or lower. Oh, altitude. Yes, that's the grown person way of saying it. So it's like that, but you can navigate around, and it's like a full 360 underwater.
That's
Oh,
pretty
wow.
neat.
That's really cool, right?
I would love to see the camera rig for that too,
Yeah.
actually. I'm curious because you don't see a diver or anything. Like
No.
if you turn around, it's not
It's probably like a
little
drone,
like a water drone.
They did
Yeah.
it with, I can't remember the name of it now, but they did it in tandem with some systems
Mm-hmm.
that maybe part of Nat Geo, like something that was doing underwater photography.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's a whole thing.
That's
which
great.
I thought was super cool.
Yeah. Hiking trails will have them as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which is pretty nice.
I love, like, again, producer brain never turns off. So I went to a Greek island 2 summers ago for a friend's wedding, and it was so fun. But it's for real, just this super small, not super touristy. And I was still able to, like, I'm like, where's the, because it was this 32-hour travel process door to door to get there. I'm like, where's the ferry going to land? What do the streets look like when I get, and the fact that I could do that, because again, producer brain, like I need those things in my head
Yeah.
Right.
of like,
You're
wait,
your own
what's
fixer.
this? My own fixer. I love that. I might get business cards just so I can put that on it.
You're like, what am I doing with 1,000 business cards?
Someone want one of these?
Yeah.
Is anyone?
You're like, I've told people
When
about
was
it on
the
my
last time
blog.
you gave a
And they're
business
like,
card out?
it's right on there. Why don't you fix this problem?
Awesome. Well, that's incredible. Google Street View for the Great Barrier Reef.
For the ocean
For the ocean.
and several other oceanic
view.
parts. Yeah.
Ocean View. There you go. Nice.
Cool. So there's this podcast. I might have mentioned it here before. It's called Stay Tuned with Preet. It's this guy, Preet Bharara. He was the former U.S. attorney
I follow him
in
on
New
Twitter.
York. That he was the only U.S. attorney that stayed on from Obama to the Trump administration. And then Trump basically was like, hey, are you going to stay loyal to me? And he said, no, that's not how it works. And he fired him. And now he's like a very successful podcaster. And, with very kind of leftist leanings. But regardless of that, the last episode was called The Laws of Language with this guy, Benjamin Dreyer, who was a copy editor at Random House for many, many years. And he wrote this new book that I just bought. I haven't gotten it yet, but it's called An Utterly Correct Guide to Clarity and Style. And it's just about writing. And this guy has been copy editing for like 100 years. And so the entire episode of this podcast, The Laws of Language, if you listen to just that episode, is like they literally just talk about like when to use a semicolon and if you can start a sentence with
sounds
and or but, and the Oxford comma or the series comma, which is, like, should you put a comma between the last two words?
I love a good Oxford
And a
comma
list.
argument.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just really enjoyed listening to them talk about it. So yeah, I don't know.
Sounds
Check it
good.
out. The Laws of Language. It's the most recent episode. It came out June 6th on Stay Tuned with Preet. It's very much like, he talks about how you shouldn't default to he nowadays.
Yeah.
Like it's very much, he's been doing it for 40 years, and his witnessing of evolution and how long it took him to just kind of be okay with using the pronoun they, and basically about his comfort and realizing that the way you learn English is how you think everything is supposed to be, grammatically correct, and about evolving the language and grammar. So I don't know, it's fun.
Sounds good. Well, this is a very eclectic mix of unpaid endorsements. My last one is a short called "It's Been Too Long." Have you guys seen this?
Mm-mm.
It was a Vimeo staff pick.
Sounds like a name of something that's not short.
So this is it's more of like a heightened romance between these two people who walk into a cabin and they're like ex-lovers, and they're just so deeply committed to this sultry, heightened, erotic sort of vibe. But it's just them talking to each other about whether or not they should make love and reminiscing about the last time they had a rendezvous.
Sounds
And
like a
it's-
Will Ferrell sketch.
Kind of, but a tiny bit more grounded, but pretty close. It's not too far from that. And the performances are really great. It's really just charming and funny, and an elegant little short that doesn't really evolve a ton, but I really was captivated by and really loved.
It's like a good, you feel like a good sense of time and space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Do they use the term make love? Because that makes me
Yes,
uncomfortable.
yeah, definitely.
It's going to definitely factor into me watching it or not.
There's definitely a lot of unbroken eye contact
Oh.
between the two of them. And I did a little digging because I was trying to figure out where I recognized the male lead from. And I realized that the filmmaker, she did a bunch of Geico spots. And the guy is the guy who pops out of nowhere and is like, this is a Geico commercial.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. That's
so
amazing.
that's a nice little connection there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So he's the head in the fried rice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's really good in those Geico commercials.
Yeah. Well, they're a duo made in heaven.
Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Drea. And do you tweet? Is there any way
How can
people
our listeners
find you?
Yeah, I'm
keep track
on
of all of your many things?
mostly Twitter. I'm not super good at it, but I'm okay. I'm at the Drea Clark. TheDreaClark.
Perfect. Well, you can find me at Mr. Matt Enlow and at Just Shoot It Pod for all of our social. You can check out our show notes. We'll have links to all of the things that we talked about, thanks to our wonderful producer, Madeline Rosewatt, on our website at Just Shoot It Pod.
Yeah, and I'm at okaplan on Instagram. And send us an email, justshootitpod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought. Let us know if you have any questions. Rate us on iTunes if you don't mind. This episode was edited by Jay McCullough. It was produced by Madeline Rosewatt, and our webmaster is Ewan Williams. The music you're listening to is from the Free Music Archive and the artist Jahzzar, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.